วิทยากรท่านถัดไปนะครับจะเป็นผู้ช่วยศาสตราจารย์ดร. จอห์น เดรเปอร์นะครับท่านเป็นผู้อำนวยการนะครับจากศูนย์วิจัยนะครับSocial Survey Center and Research Group ของวิทยาลัยการปกครองท้องถิ่นมหาวิทยาลัยขอนแก่นนะครับเรียนเชิญโอเคดร. Draper
lens of the ASEAN Smart City Network. First, it was interesting to see that you have a charter movement or charter city movement going now in Thailand. The idea of urban charters is hundreds of years old in the UK. They were originally between the sovereign, the king, and the cities, connected and stimulated the growth of cities via autonomous development. For example, through municipal corporations or municipally owned corporations. And there was a charter movement in the UK in the 1800s for England to have a national constitution. And in my opinion, Thailand already has a social charter at a national level. The 12 core values of Thai people are a form of social charter. So let's move on to some of the top level frameworks that there exist, conceptual frameworks that exist for social collaboration. So firstly, there's goal 11 of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, sustainable cities and communities, make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable, especially in the form of safe, affordable housing. The UN Habitat New Urban Agenda, Habitat 3, came out in 2016, does not actually mention social collaboration. The New Urban Agenda is the implementation plan for the UN SDGs for city-urban environments. It does mention social cohesion, it mentions diversity, and it mentions inclusion. Now, where we're going to go today is I'm going to try to point out that societies are smart, but smart cities may or not help social collaboration. So, as you know, the smart city movement is spreading globally very quickly. In 2018, Singapore announced the ASCN, 26 cities. Smart city is globally supported by hundreds of cities, but there are critics. At KKU, we systematically assessed the ASCN and looked at the implications of promoting these 26 ASEAN smart cities. We synthesized criticisms of smart city initiatives, and we applied a high-level quintuple helix systems analytic approach. Here is the ASEAN Smart Cities Network for you. It's got a very nice website. You can click on the website on the cities and you can get the urban plans, the smart city plans of all of the 26 cities at a high level. So, what is a smart city discourse? There are now thousands of papers, articles on smart cities. Smart city has been described as movement, ideology, initiative, transformation, solution, so like a belief system almost, or various technologies or surveillance systems. Nobody really agrees on what a smart city is. It's an incoherent discourse or chaotic discourse. There are some basic problems with conceptualizing a smart city in terms of social collaboration. So, smart city conceptualizations are sometimes ahistorical. They may ignore the history of the city or previous technological and digital development. Smart city initiatives are also very tech-friendly. They overprivilege technological variables. They may see the city as a system of systems or as a machine. Instead, city development must be led by social and political processes, not by technologists. Also, cities are different, as the Chinese honored guests were pointing out. There is no one size fits all. So we can have standards, but at the same time, capacity is a major issue for smart cities, including the social and political capacity for planning, financial limitations, problems with city size, and just whether basic services are prioritized in a smart city. There may also be problems with personal privacy, with data collection, and smart cities can also support authoritarian impulses, i.e. the desire of bureaucracies to control everything from birth to death. In this kind of system, how do citizens give permissions? There was a recent data breach of million of Singaporean data, healthcare data, personal data on health of Singaporean citizens. So even Singapore cannot design completely safe systems. Camera systems can be used for political purposes, like in some South American contexts right now. The other problem is, as was being pointed out by the last Chinese speaker, any kind of development can produce winners and losers. Richer cities can attract more funding, more investment, have the capacity to conduct PPPs. Therefore, smart cities can be anti-poor, pro-rich, increasing inequality in society. So, is the ASEAN Smart City Network genuine social collaboration, or is it just a political tool? The ASEAN Smart City, the general context is the ASEAN Economic Community Blueprint, the Master Plan on ASEAN Connectivity 2025, and the ASEAN ICT Master Plan 22. It was announced at the 32nd 2018 ASEAN Summit. There was a governance workshop on it. There were proposed business partnerships with Alibaba Cloud, plus with organizations like the EU ASEAN Business Council, Hitachi, so on. There was a draft framework agreed, and then 26 city-specific action plans were drawn up. In November last year, the ASEAN member governments approved this, and the plan does recognize there may be differences between basic types of city. So administrative cities, commercial cities, tourist cities, and so different services or types of smart city must be developed according to the type of city. Singapore commissioned an interesting study by McKinsey Global Institute, and there is not much emphasis on social collaboration. The emphasis is on infrastructure development. Roughly $7 trillion of investment is required to support sustainable growth in Southeast Asia. And they divided the ASEAN smart cities into basic types. Sandboxes like Singapore, prime movers, one down from Singapore, emerging champions, one down from those, and then agile seedbeds, one down from those, in terms of technological ability or capacity. The report recommends there's a need for strategic visions to engage the public, provide funding, and monetizing data. Also offering development rights, modifying zoning restrictions. These are models to generate revenue from PPPs. So all the money is expected to come from PPPs. The government in the Singapore vision is basically the buyer, and it does advocate government partnering with other stakeholders, could be public or private. There's some mention of social sector institutions. And this was that report. Now, the main driver for rapid growth, main driver for smart cities is rapid urbanization. So there's no doubt that we have to do something in ASEAN. So urban population is booming. There are advantages, can be an economic driver, can reduce poverty, but there are obvious disadvantages too. So if we rapidly develop our cities in ASEAN, they can have poor ecological footprints. So what about environmental health? And there can be very high intra-urban inequalities in terms of access, income, and power between the urban center or core and peripheral semi-urban or peri-urban communities. So, to create social collaboration, we need to focus on livability and sustainability goals. This means livable urban environments. We need to manage the health risks. Intersectoral participation in terms of social and political progress. Support for urban immigrants, making cities link rural regions with the global economy, networking towns and cities. And Singapore Smart City Framework prioritizes high quality of life, competitive economy, and sustainable environment. Singapore designed this to be compatible with the UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. Whoops. Okay, so there was mention in the Singapore plan of civic and social factors, social cohesion, culture and heritage and tourism. There's also health and well-being, security, quality of the environment, built infrastructure, industry and innovation, all supported by digital infrastructure and applications development, partnership and funding. In terms of the classic 6 smart city framework, we can look at social collaboration in terms of smart people and smart governance. What I'm going to introduce to you now is a basic knowledge framework. So where does knowledge come from? So in mode 1, knowledge comes from academia, then academia and public sector in mode 2, and then academia, public sector, private sector in mode 3. So this is the triple helix, classic triple helix of interactions. But I'm going to introduce for you today the quadruple helix and the quintuple helix. The quadruple and quintuple helixes, at the quadruple or 4th level, we add the people sector or social collaboration. This comes in 2 basic forms: NGO, civil society, or the media, local media, national media, social media. And at the quintuple helix level, we add an understanding of socio-ecological interactions. So this is a model that I encourage you to be aware of, to use. It's an extension of the classic triple helix, and it creates a model for the development of sustainable development through innovation, involving all 5 different sectors interacting together. So that's where we get social collaboration from for innovation in a smart city or even in a regional development. So how does social collaboration fit with democracy? Well, within this kind of framework that I just showed you, there is an emphasis on quality of democracy. How is democracy compatible with different political systems? Well, we've just had some Chinese speakers. China is a socialist state under the People's Democratic Dictatorship. So there is a form of democracy in China, democratic centralism. As I said, under the triple helix model, we have 3 sectors: universities, industry, public sector. Quadruple helix, we add civil society and the media. Civil society and the media is important for citizen co-creation. So, deliberative or direct democracy is a form of social collaboration. And in the quintuple helix, we add the social-ecological context. And this is an example of how it works in China. You may have heard or recognized this picture. This is the Guiyu region of Shantou City. And China, back in 2013, decided to stop processing electronic waste. And this came about as a result of partly democratic processes. So yes, social collaboration in areas like the environment, leveraging the quality of democracy is compatible with different political systems. Using the quintuple helix theory for smart cities is still quite new. We can look at it in different ways, the national context, city-specific context, and I'm going to go through these quite quickly now. So academia. Academia is important for generating ideas, for being a place where citizens can communicate with academics. And there is one basic problem here. If academics don't understand what a smart city is or what social collaboration is, then social collaboration cannot be facilitated. Within ASEAN, there are only 5 countries and 6 cities that are home to top Asian universities. Jakarta, Johor Bahru, Kuala Lumpur, Manila, Bangkok, and Singapore. So these are cities where social collaboration naturally flows from academic universities. However, there is a lack of academic capacity in many other ASEAN Smart City Network countries. In fact, half the ASCN countries lack academic expertise, lack high-level academic expertise, even at the national level, to support smart city development or even to educate their own populations. I'm thinking of countries like Myanmar, Laos, Cambodia. What about competitiveness and technological readiness? These are also need to be supported in the ecosystem for social collaboration. Again, there is great variation on this factor, on this variable. So Singapore is really, really high up there, but there is no data. We completely lack data for Myanmar on competitiveness and technological readiness. Cambodia and LPDR, also Philippines, are quite low. What about globalization? So how networked are our cities, the 26 cities, to the rest of the world? Brunei and the LPDR have no ranking cities. Obviously, this is a bit more difficult to leverage private entrepreneurial activity. In addition, there are the level of functioning of some of the governments in ASEAN countries are low, especially in Laos PDR, Myanmar, Vietnam, even Thailand at the moment. There is great concern in the private sector over political stability, over the stability of the Thai government. To what extent is the Thai government able to coordinate with the private sector and academia to leverage smart cities? Okay, looking at civil society. Civil society for social collaboration, you can look at citizens, a free media, in co-creation of smart cities via concepts that you probably have all heard of, like urban living labs. This is also very problematic in many ASEAN countries. Only Malaysia, Philippines, and Singapore are there high level of civil liberties. Cambodia, LPDR, Myanmar, Vietnam are authoritarian states with very low civil liberties. Hybrid right now is a hybrid regime that may change today or may not change today. Indonesians have a similar level of civil society. Brunei is directly administered by the Sultan. What about the media? So Lao PDR and Vietnam are very serious situations for reporting. What about online information? So do people in these countries understand what smart cities can be? Most medium developed countries are still at a very low stage, meaning little exposure. For example, you may have heard of Scopus, the Scopus academic database. There are 0 hits on smart city for Laos. There is no research in Laos or by Lao people on smart cities. we did the search on the same day through the Vientiane Times newspaper in Laos, 0 hits for smart cities. In contrast, hundreds of hits for smart cities and Singapore. Hundreds of hits for Singapore, for smart cities in the Straits Times, Singapore newspaper. Going to the socio-ecology, social collaboration on the ecology. We looked at 2 different variables, environmental health and ecosystem vitality. So these are different. One is pollution, a measure of pollution. The other is a measure of biodiversity. Brunei is looking very good. Singapore, Malaysia also have relatively high levels of environment. So good social collaboration on the environment. Much lower in the LPDR, Cambodia, Indonesia, Thailand, and Vietnam. Ecosystem vitality, biodiversity is at risk in every ASEAN country, except maybe Brunei. So, how do we incorporate social collaboration? So, there are statist models, laissez-faire models, or maybe hybrid vertical linear systems. In the quadruple helix, we kind of hope that civil society and the media are free, but in most ASEAN countries they are not free. However, there is an emphasis on sustainability even in authoritarian countries or autocratic countries, and so under the ASCN, Singapore has an opportunity to include more social collaboration models. So these could be social enterprises, these could be co-creation, for example, where local people get involved in solar farming, solar energy farming. These models may be attractive to ASEAN people in these countries, and so Singapore could also focus on developing the soft skills in the social sciences or socio-political areas to manage soft cities, so that soft cities are not so that smart cities are not seen as machines, but places for social collaboration. However, this is not emphasized in the ASCN so far. Okay, social collaboration via civil liberties and media freedom. As I said, the low level of civil liberties and media freedom, this presents challenges for social collaboration. Adapting PPPs can be risky for underdeveloped or developing countries because the PPP, the private companies can push cities into contracts that they may not want in the long term. Also, there can be a problem with donor-driven development, so this is perhaps coming through banks or UN programs where the cities do not have the capacity to manage these programs. Even in Singapore, Singapore has a soft form of authoritarianism. People provide consent to the state, but to what extent are in Singapore civil liberties completely free? So there are still problems there about informed consent. There's also tension between a citizen-centric service state and a surveillance state. Vietnam is moving in this direction in terms of collecting lots of data on its citizens while combining surveillance technologies. Phuket is going in the same direction with its Eagle Eyes project. So there are threats to personal privacy and surveillance in the ASCN. How can we go forwards? Well, one way is to implement, like I said, UN SDG 11, make cities and human settlements more inclusive, safe, resilient, sustainable. And Singaporean researchers are working on this. They have been looking, how can we take advanced smart city concepts and deliver them through the ASCN to maybe less developed countries? One way forward is indicators. And the gold standard for indicators for smart city is the United for Smart Sustainable Cities, which is a UN initiative or UN program, which Singapore helped develop with the UN. Now, our recommendation coming out of COLA, out of KhonKaen University for social collaboration in authoritarian states, is sustainable urban governance. So what is sustainable urban governance? So we recommend moving maybe from the idea of an authoritarian context to a sustainable smart city within a systems framework. Authoritarian states usually like systems. They understand systems. Systems can be controlled and managed. So we suggest sustainable urban governance as a systems approach. This creates sustainable governance, and this has been applied in very authoritarian centralized states like Saudi Arabia, for example, with some success. Sustainable urban governance will then be, you can then create socio-ecological interaction between society and nature, and you have a socially sustainable smart city. Again, the basic idea is sustainable smart governance. So, here's a quick conclusion. We must look at social sustainability issues for city dwellers, especially going back to the basics of health. Are cities healthy places? And I saw that on the charter sign outside. The next steps, what we're looking at now, is maybe in KKU using indicators to better understand the smart city through the European Union City Keys indicator sets, where people is of a special emphasis. So, for people, what is important is the long-term attractiveness of cities for a wide range of inhabitants and users, especially in the areas of health, safety, access to other services, education, and diversity and social cohesion, promoting diversity, community engagement, and social cohesion to increase civic mindedness, the sense of the community of a city, a living city. And quality of housing in the built environment, so basic housing. And this is how that can be done under the City Keys structure, so the various indicators, top-level indicators we can use. Thank you very much for your time.